Mikhail Khodorkovsky, founder of one of Russia's most successful oil companies in the 90s, went from being the ultimate Kremlin insider to one of Vladimir Putin's most fierce critics. For his views, he paid by 10 years in a Russian jail. He's been living in exile in London since 2013, and since Putin's recent aggression against Ukraine, his views became even more outspoken. I met Mr. Khodorkovsky in his London office to talk about the peace talks between the Kremlin and Kiev, the perspectives of the Russian society, as well as the future of Vladimir Putin's regime. Mr. Khodorkovsky, talks between Russia and Ukraine, mediated by Turkey, suddenly started to progress quite quickly. Does it mean that Vladimir Putin is serious about striking a deal with Ukraine?
2 недели назад и даже неделю назад
2 weeks, or even 1 week ago, I would have said no. Because for Putin to become serious about these talks, he must realize that he is stuck in Ukraine. About a week ago, I already said that it will take another week for him to come to this realization. Strangely, he seems to be sticking to my timetable. After a month of war, he has understood that there can be no military solution here, and there is an attempt to transition to a real negotiation process.
So Putin is serious about striking a significant deal with President Zelensky of Ukraine?
We cannot give a definitive answer to this question at the moment. Putin has 2 options now. Either he escalates things, which could mean either introducing mobilization or using tactical nuclear weapons, or he can stabilize the situation and begin peace talks in earnest. He is at a point where he has to make a decision, and the position of the West is critically important now. The West's position needs to be clear, meaning comprehensive support for Ukraine if the war continues, and in case Putin uses tactical nuclear weapons or other weapons of mass destruction. That sort of clear position from the West will, let's say, help Putin make the right decision.
Russian officials now say that the Kremlin, Russia will concentrate on Donbas, on the region of Donbas in eastern Ukraine. What could that mean?
Putin is stuck when it comes to the military operation and his initial goal, replacing the government in Kyiv. This means he must think about what he can sell to the Russian people. It would have been easier for him to sell what happened if he had claimed more territories, like the Kherson or the Mykolaiv regions of Ukraine. But this would have meant endless guerrilla warfare by Ukrainians and countless Russian soldiers' deaths. This would have very quickly destroyed the illusion of victory. So the only option for Putin is to try and keep the regions where there will be no guerrilla war, or at least it won't be intense. In my opinion, that is the case in the areas which Ukrainians call the temporarily occupied territories, Donetsk and Luhansk, which he already controls. Because there, the segments of Ukrainian society that oppose Putin have already been destroyed.
Most observers today believe that Vladimir Putin started this latest campaign against Ukraine based on completely false assumptions about Ukrainian society, Ukrainian military capabilities, so on and so forth. Well, do you understand how does he take decisions and who advises him?
It's obvious today that Russia is a dictatorship, and in a dictatorship, only one person makes decisions. That person is Vladimir Putin. Those in his inner circle can only shape his opinion and influence him by either presenting certain bits of information or not presenting them. I am completely convinced that this time Vladimir Putin was presented a significant amount of false information, both about the situation in Ukraine as well as the condition of his own armed forces. We saw that. And Putin also had the problem that he was limiting his contacts in accordance with anti-COVID measures. He showed that he was panicked about the disease. So that means he really limited who he was talking to, his sources of information.
Well, you say Mr. Putin committed certain mistakes by self-isolating, by limiting the number of his advisors and people from whom he takes advice. Did the West commit any mistakes dealing with Putin?
Without doubt, it did. The West perceived Putin as a well-known dictator and autocrat, maybe even as a corrupt person, but still as a statesman. But in fact, Putin is actually something different. He's a thug. His roots are in the KGB, which was a mafia-style organization which completely ignored the law. He has a completely different way of thinking. Any attempt to reach a compromise with that kind of a man, without first showing him strength, that is a huge mistake. It only provokes him to take a further step towards an attack. Only when his force is met with force, only then is an agreement possible. Anyone in Russia who witnessed the mafia years in post-Soviet Russia knows that. And I understand that especially well, because I spent 10 years in jail with these kinds of thugs. I repeatedly tried to explain this to Western leaders. I am glad now that at least Mr. Biden, judging by his remarks in Poland, has understood this and took a position that is immediately clear to any thug. If you attack me, I'll hit you right back.
Well, the West introduced unprecedented sanctions against Vladimir Putin's regime. Still, we keep hearing that Russian oligarchs, Russian billionaires are just moving their assets from the West to locations like Istanbul or United Arab Emirates. So, are they safe?
First of all, we need to see very clearly that Putin has become, or maybe he always was, an enemy of the West. That is his declared position. He has also put it in writing, including in Russia's national security doctrine. As long as he is in power, no one in Europe can be safe. Europe will have to spend huge amounts of money on its security, money which could have been put to better use. It is extremely important for Europe and America to put their political systems and their economies outside the reach of what I would call Putin's extended arms. His instruments are not only his secret services, but also businessmen who depend on him. The people who refuse to call aggression, aggression, refuse to call the war criminal Putin a war criminal. And these people are trying to move their money somewhere. And you know, that's not that easy to do. And once again, the West must distance itself from these people. To put it simply, one cannot compare the money they will bring with the money the West will have to spend to ensure its safety. Security is an expensive thing.
In your personal view, how will Putin's regime end Will it be a coup d'etat? Will it be a popular uprising? Or probably it will continue and evolve?
Большая страна отличается
A
от
large country is different from other smaller countries because any dictatorial regime has more possibilities of containing the problem, no matter what the level of public discontent is.
практически уровня общественного недовольства. Тем не менее,
However, we can look back through history. History tells us that threats to such a regime either come from the leader's inner circle, or another risk is armed people, the army.
Другой риск – это вооруженные люди.
And there is option number 3, the toughest one, like in Iran, when a dictator stays in power until his natural death. That could even be 10 years or more.
Такой вот диктатор продолжает находиться у власти до самой смерти.
The best option would be if Russia could transition into a more federal structure, maybe even a confederation of some sort, gradually. And that path would have a more real chance if the 2 first options of regime change happen.
Постепенно. И у этого пути больше шансов, если будут реализованы первые 2 варианта. Я был в Германии.
You know, I was in Germany recently, and I talked to people who remember the past. And I asked them how quick the denazification process in Germany was. They said that German society only really started to perceive Hitler in the way that we perceive him now, as a global force of evil, and started to feel horrified with what Germany did somewhere around 1968, so over 20 years later, a generation later. Unfortunately, I think that in Russia, that process won't be fast either.
Также не так мало времени.
Mr. Khodorkovsky, thank you very much.
Спасибо.